In this video, we will talk about the rest of the types of vulnerabilities, starting with hardware vulnerabilities. Then we will talk about cloud-specific vulnerabilities, supply chain, cryptographic, and a few others. So starting with hardware vulnerabilities, what are they? Hardware, you have firmware vulnerabilities. What is the firmware? It is a software that is embedded in hardware devices used to control the functionality of the device. So it's usually in things like CPUs, processors, motherboards, and those hardware tools that should not be easily modified by users. One example of the firmware vulnerability was one called Meltdown, which exploited the flaw in the processor of Intel devices, and it will break the isolation between user applications and operating systems. And an attacker could use the Meltdown weakness to read the memory of other programs in the system and expose passwords or personal data. So it's very important to keep firmware updated. Another type of hardware vulnerability is end of life. So end of life is hardware that is no longer supported by the manufacturer. For example, you see the iPhone there is probably the version 3 or 4 is not supported by Apple anymore. So if you're still using an iPhone 3 or 4 and a problem arises and your phone crashes, Apple will not support you. So this is a situation called end of life. It's no longer supported by the manufacturer. Another type of vulnerability, you have operating system-based vulnerabilities. So these ones are within the operating system and they can be exploited to gain access. And they can lead to privilege escalation, so higher level of access. They can lead to data breaches. They can lead to services being disrupted. They can compromise systems completely and more. What do we mean by privilege escalation? Here is an example right here. Imagine you have Bank of America and their hierarchical system from regular users, interns at the bottom, and at the top you have admins, you have super admins. And then in their network they have a firewall and you have a hacker who tries to break in. First, when he tries to break in into the system, he gets a flag is raised by a firewall, but then he successfully gets into the network. Now, the first type of people he will try to hack are the regular users, the interns, those who are not well trained, those who don't have too much security on their accounts. And once he's able to break into those systems and get access, now he will work his way all the way to the top and get admin access and then break into the entire network. That's called privilege escalation. So you gain privilege from a smaller account and then you escalate all the way to the more privileged and important accounts. Another type of vulnerability is cloud specific. So these are related to cloud environments. And here you have something like misconfigurations, because it's not because your your environment or your data is in the cloud that it's secure. You still have to do the work to put the proper configurations to ensure security, to ensure safety and privacy. Also, multi-tenancy. Supply chain vulnerabilities are those introduced by vendors and third-party providers. So if you review the video on supply chain from section 2.2, you will see how Target lost about $200 million because they didn't make sure that their supply chain and their third-party providers was secure. So even if your organization is secure, you also have to take a look at your third parties and vendors and providers to make sure that the whole supply chain is secure. Cryptographic vulnerabilities are those with weak algorithms. So these are cryptographic systems that use poor keys, that have outdated algorithms, or weak keys, like we talked about in section 1.4. We talked about symmetric algorithms, and we said AES is secure, but DES is not secure. Or if you use weak keys that are not strong enough, that can be easily broken into, or if a key is compromised, these are cryptographic weaknesses, cryptographic vulnerabilities. Another type of vulnerability is misconfiguration. So this is a weakness due to incorrect configuration of systems. So imagine a user who leaves default passwords or default configurations on systems which are well known by cyber criminals or by the public. Anyone can break into their system and cause damage. Mobile device vulnerabilities are weaknesses, as the name implies, that can bypass mobile device security. And in mobile device vulnerabilities, you have side loading. So side loading happens when you're installing applications from untrusted sources. So rather than using the official app sources like App Store from in Apple or Google Play with the Android devices, you're using a source that hasn't been verified, that hasn't been scanned, and you're exposing your device to malware. So that's a vulnerability. And another one is jailbreaking. So jailbreaking is getting access to the operating system of devices. When you gain access to the OS of devices, you can modify the nature of the device and make it look completely different. So these are a few mobile device vulnerabilities. You have side loading and you have jailbreaking. And finally, you have zero-day vulnerabilities. Zero-day vulnerabilities, these ones are those that are not yet known by the software vendors, and they do not have any available fixes. So these are, very, really new types of vulnerabilities. You don't know about them. The software vendor doesn't know about them. And an attacker can take advantage of that and damage your system until a fix is found.
All right, guys, what did you think of this course? You liked it? Great. We're glad you did. You can follow us on all our social media platforms, including YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And don't forget, we also have these awesome Amazon flashcards to help you study. So definitely check out www.cybermook.com to order yours today.